Hi everybody, I'm Maury from Maury the Webcomic, as well as a bunch of other places. I normally make comics and post them on the internet, but I do sometimes post other things. And as I told a lot of my watchers a week or so ago, I'm going to start live streaming on YouTube. And I was working on that this past weekend, and I found out the hard way that setting up a live stream for YouTube is a lot harder than setting up a live stream for the website Livestream. Just the programs I had and things like that just aren't quite set up the same way that they'd be needed to set up for YouTube. And the whole process is a little bit more than I expected. There's a lot more clearances that you have to go through, which is understandable, but it means it's going to take longer before I can actually have a live streaming schedule, let alone actually live stream on YouTube. And when I realized that, I decided to make a video, and this ended up being it. As I was inspired on the way home from work, just thinking about a bunch of things, and was thinking about how, this could be I could probably paint this for a video on YouTube. And I got thinking about the people that I watch on YouTube who make art, and there's a bunch of them who start in a very ambiguous, lots of shapes kind of painting sketch that then refines into something amazing towards the end. I thought, I'll try doing that. I'll use I'll use Clip Studios to do that, because the brushes in that are more painterly than in Manga Studios, even though I'm not as comfortable with Clip. And I spent about an hour doing paint sketches that I ended up not being comfortable. I didn't know how to refine them. That's just not where my skill set is to any degree. So this video actually starts when I decided I gonna have to do this the old-fashioned way for me, and made line art and slowly refined. And at this point, I decided, you know what, screw trying to make it look like painting. Can't do painting. I can't do painting digitally. It's just not something that I'm accustomed to yet. I'll get there eventually, probably with enough practice, because that's how practicing works. But at this point, I decided doing it the way I normally do it, soft cell shading, which heavily inspired by Tetsuya Nomura because of Kingdom Hearts, which you can actually see pretty well the influence in the hand here, especially when the hand's done. You can see it a little bit at this stage. Because at this point I decided I was just going to do it the old-fashioned way, I hadn't set up my layers. So there's going to be a lot of instances of me just messing with layers and creating new layers and having to go back and rename layers, because I went into actually doing it the way I normally do it without preparing ahead of time. So there's, I would say, a bit of wasted space, a little bit of wasted space, at least video-wise. I try to speed up those sections a lot more. I don't normally make videos like this, so I don't know how my editing is. Let me know if this is okay, if this ends up looking okay. Like right here, there's just a lot of just random me moving around with layers. Before this gets off the lips, I want to mention doing lips has actually been something I've been working on for the past 6 months. About lipstick lips. Like I can shade regular, or I guess skin tone lips, or the rest of the skin tone, the same tone. But once it's a different shade, when it's a lot darker, I don't know why, it just confuses me. And I'm really happy with how this one came out. It's not ideal, but it's definitely better. And the nose on this came out better than I was expecting as well. It's closer to how I shade and do highlights in my sketchbook than how I normally do with 3D, and 3D, how I normally do with digital. Because I couldn't figure out how, and I'm really glad I was able to figure it out this time. I'm gonna talk about, I guess, more on color composition with this. I knew that I wanted the poison apple in the middle to really stand out. So it is actually the most saturated thing in this, as well as the whole warm versus cool colors of the purple being a cold color and the red being the most warm you can get. But also being the highest saturation. So the purple is all lower saturated, except I think some of the very pale purple that I use for the light shading on the skin and a little bit on the hair, I think might be higher saturation. It's still not as high as the red, but it's closer to high saturation. As well as I didn't use any dark reds, because dark reds I feel would have taken away from the bright crimson. So I actually used the purple to shade the red instead, which I at least feel it emphasized the red more. I hope it did. I think it did. Oh, a little concept on what this is. It's a poison heart is kind of what I've dubbed it, because it's, hopefully this is posted on Singles Awareness Day, aka Valentine's Day. As many of you know, I was in a relationship that broke up last year, towards the end of the year, and of course I still think about it sometimes. As well as, you know, Singles Awareness Day being here, I can't not think about it with all the advertisements. And it got me thinking about how a lot of things use the fairy tale concept, and real life is not a fairy tale no matter how much you want it to be. And so I thought of this idea on the way home of bad ends for fairy tales and things like that, or just kind of fairy tale inspired. And this is definitely inspired by Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, especially the particular moment from the Disney film where the queen, now transformed into a witch, pulls the poison apple out of the cauldron, and it has that poison goop just dripping off of it, with the face that's like from a jack-o'-lantern, like that kind of just scary, creepy face. That moment always just kind of has stuck with me a lot growing up. And so I tend to use it a lot when, how do I put it, for things like this. The feelings of like a broken heart or just aching heart, even if it's not romance related. And I draw it a lot in a lot of different things. And so I thought, you know, I might as well do that for the first one of these. I hope I can think of as interesting things like this for other ones. We'll see what happens. I think I'll talk about a little bit on how I do layers. I have my base tone all the way at the bottom. Then I have my two shadings for each object. I have a light shaded tone, and then I have the darker shaded tone on top of it. Then above that I have my highlight layers, which for most of this I think I have 2 highlight layers for each object, so that I can do base highlights and then again refined highlights, just like with the shading. Only for all the highlights except for the heart, it's the same lighter color for both. But the heart, I actually used a lighter color. Some of the highlights, I think I did use a slightly darker, lighter color, but normally, most of the purple, the highlight is all the same color. Let's see. Where's this? What is it refining right now? Again, I'm not used to doing videos like this. This isn't where I've normally shown people how I do my work, so I'm experimenting with how to even record the audio for this. So I'm watching a little image of the video so that I don't have to use up all of my computer's memory. It's very small, so it's a little bit on the difficult side for me to see what's going on in the image. It's okay, it's refining hair. I know where we are. Awesome. I hope you guys like these. Let me know if or this, not these. There's only one so far. Let me know if you want to see more of these, because this was a fun experiment. and I think I want to do more of them. I guess if you make it, they'll come, but I don't know how much I want to be working on something that nobody wants to see. You know, that feeling. Okay, so I do have. This was originally planned to have text with it, and we're about to come on to the point where it's gonna start working on the text. And my basic idea for how the text looks, or will look when it gets there, is, how do I put it? I went through a couple different ideas before I got to this point, just before I even got to drawing it, on what kind of text I wanted it to be, because since it's a fairy tale, I thought maybe I could have more of that ornate kind of flowing calligraphy, cursive-y kind of stuff with all the extra flowing lines. And but then I didn't want it to distract from what I was already making, and that kind of typography I feel might do that. So I ended up thinking about, well, what is the image already, and the poison heart with the goop poison on it, and deciding to go with more of a text that kind of looks like that. And so it's going to get to that in a moment once I finish in this. This is when I was getting rid of all of the extra and doing the final saves, and here we go, moving on to the text. So I used a very wide, clunky brush specifically to kind of give it that super wet, blobby kind of look to the text that I wanted. And originally put, I miss you, not your poison, but then I was thinking about how a relationship is a two-way street, and so whatever pain is there is felt both ways. It's never totally one-sided, so I switched it to the poison. It's a shared poison, and I really like the feeling of that better, and so I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna incorporate that more, that kind of like shared pain separation for the other bad end fairy tale images as I think of them. So as you can see here, because I made it all in red, the not your is kind of lost a little bit. And so I end up putting a gradient, as you can see, to kind of emphasize the space between it. And then later, after I switch the your to the, which will come out in a minute probably, you'll see that I airbrush behind that section even more to just emphasize it again, because I felt like the text was getting lost. Here it goes, switching to the E just was not being nice, so I had to make it separately, shrink it, bring it with the, shrink the, move it all together, and then shade it in. So the I feel does look a little bit different because I did all of it on its own as opposed to doing it with the rest of the letters, but I think it holds together with it pretty well. And we're getting towards the end, so let me know in the comments if you guys like this. You know, favorite it, share it, subscribe if you want to see more, I guess, if you want content. Anyway, this was fun to make. I might make at least one more, even if nobody wants to see it. I like it. Anyway, later, loves.